It's good to have you join us again. You're watching Standpoint on TVC News. So earlier in the week, the Nigerian Senate replied Senator Natasha Akpotiuduahan's complaint at the United Nations Interparliamentary Conference in New York. This through a letter by the Senate leader, Ndukwe, the chairperson of the House of Representatives Committee on Women Affairs and Social Development, Kafilat Ogara, who is representing Nigeria at the event in an official capacity, read the letter at that event. Well, the Senate, in the response, says, and I quote, Senator Natasha Akpotiuduahan was suspended for gross misconduct and unruly behavior, and not as a result of allegation of sexual harassment or assault. So Mrs. Ogbara has now called for a thorough investigation into the allegation by Senator Akpotiuduahan against the President of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio. The Kogi lawmaker has taken her case before the global institution for them to prevail over what she says is an injustice meted on her. Let's get more perspectives now on the back and forth between the Senate President and the aggrieved senator, that's Natasha Akpotiuduahan. We have with us President Citizens Quest for Truth Initiative, Ndukwe. Thanks a lot for joining us on Standpoint. Right, so what do you make of the back and forth? The matter is in court, but Senator Natasha has since taken her complaints to the world stage.
Well, it also came to me as a surprise because for somebody who is a member of the Nigerian Senate, you ought to know what the rules are. You ought to know what the Constitution says. First of all, taking the matter to the IPU after you've made your presentation on the floor of the Senate and the matter referred to the Ethics and Privileges Committee. I mean, there was no point going to that route. I mean, except you don't get the justice that you demand or you desire. And of course, you know that the IPU doesn't really, it's just an advisory body. I mean, their decisions don't have any effect on the decisions of the Nigerian Senate. And then, taking the matter to the world stage, it makes me begin to think otherwise. Ordinarily, when that incident took place, I was like, oh, she's a woman, they should just give it to her and allow her maybe to speak up and then probably allow her for that day to sit there. But when the matter became more rancorous and all that, and then hearing her talk about sexual harassment and all that, I became worried because I'm also a woman. I mingle with politicians. I'm in the media, and I know that most times this is the case when you get around politicians. People make it look like it's either you are subjected to some form of harassment, particularly when you don't have your way. But you see, the truth is, she said she's defending Nigerian women. She's doing it for Nigerian women. And I said, no, it's not for Nigerian women. It is for you, because there are very many of us Nigerian women who understand that even our fundamental rights go with our fundamental duty. And we have a duty to be respectful, to play by the rules of the game, to also respect the men, the Nigerian men, irrespective of the fact that we all may find ourselves in the Senate or somewhere together. You know, so it's not about the Nigerian men. I think it's just about her own personal cause, which I think that the media still needs to dig deeper beyond the allegations to find out what actually is the trigger, the driving force behind this energy, you know, this negative energy that has not only affected the Nigerian Senate or the Senate President, but the entire nation and the entire Nigerian women and African women, if you also add that. So going back and forth, you know, taking the matter to the world stage, I think there's something else that we may still need to find out. It's a developing story, and for me, we'll keep digging until we get to the root of the matter.
But what are the holes, from what you've said now, to fully understand your position? What sticky areas have you identified in this whole saga, in this whole controversy?
What areas?
Yes, what areas stand out for you? What gray areas stand out for you? Yes, this is happening in the hallowed chambers. But for you, with your exposure and all of that, What are the gray areas that you want to be spotlighted?
Well, for someone who is outside the Senate, who is not a lawmaker, naturally you will feel that before seats are changed, I mean, the lawmakers should be informed, should be, notified that there will be changes, But again, on the day you took an oath, to become a member of the Nigerian Senate, you are given the rule books of the Senate, which you will go and also study, and then also have those who are good in legislative advice who will take you through. So you also know that the seats can be changed. That's what we heard that day. And of course, when they mentioned that several senators spoke, that the seats can be changed at any time. The presiding officer has the right to do. I had to, stand down my own argument in her favor, But again, the issue of shouting and then, of course, pointing fingers at the Senate president, as a man, as a husband, and as a father, to me, that's a no-no. That's a no-no. No matter your rights you feel are trampled on, there are so many ways you can channel your problem and then also get the justice that you demand. And then, of course, when the issue was on, I noticed that she was emphatic on her bills being shut down, the one on Ajokuta Steel. And I think that there's something about that Ajokuta Steel that she is passionate about. And I'm thinking that there are also some interest, vested interest. There are people, high-profile people, both nationally and internationally, who may be involved in that. Because Natasha, the first time I saw her, came across her, was when she made her presentation at the National Assembly some couple of years back, and it was about the corruption at the Ajokuta Steel Complex. So I think that that is actually the major thing. And even the Senate president, the Senate itself, and Nigeria government need to find out whose interest is being protected. Is it actually the interest of the Kogi Central people, or is it her personal interest, or the interest of some persons who are big players, maybe who have the interest to either take over that place, buy it off, or whatever? So I think that's number one. The issue of sexual harassment, of course, was not on the floor of the House. That was I think either on Arise TV or Berekete Radio or something like that. It was not on the floor. She didn't mention that. So I think that that's also like an afterthought, having been suspended that day. So you need to fight back. Because the story that we are hearing about the issue of sexual harassment the day before the Senate President's birthday, which also was her own birthday, they shared the same date. I mean, on Facebook, a day after that, which was the birthday of the Senate, both of them, she made a post where she also, was eulogizing the Senate president. And from information I also gathered from those who were there for the birthday, she made an attempt to sit near the Senate president because they shared the same birthday. And they said to her, no, you need to sit where other senators are seated. You don't need to sit there irrespective of the fact. So the question is, at what point did she realize that it was a sexual harassment when the man said whatever she claims the man said to her? You see, I've seen a lot of people, a lot of women, we want to play the victim, especially when we don't have our way. I'm sorry to say, I'm not saying that there are no such issues, but you have to be sure that you have the evidence, because it's going to be your word against the person. Unfortunately, when the men are accused like this, it's difficult. Everybody tends to believe the story. But now Nigerians are becoming wiser. Even the IPU also insisted that they must hear from the other side before they can also take their own position. Most Nigerian women who are also on the streets, also even those who are in defense of Natasha, are asking for evidence. And most times these things are neither here nor there. There's a thin line actually between somebody speaking to you nicely and then somebody saying, sexually harassing you. And I do not want to believe that. I have worked with Senate President Akpabio some couple of years when we were doing our quest, of the Niger Delta, NDDC and all that. I didn't see that side of him. I didn't see that aspect of him. Although there was also an incident between the Senate President when he was Minister of the Niger Delta Affairs and the acting MD of NDDC, Ms. Joy Nune, and I played an active role because I heard from Joy, even before she came on TV to make those allegation. She told me that this was what she was going to allege, you know, and I found it strange. I don't want to say some private things, but somebody very close to her who ought to have known said to me that she never even told him of this aspect of sexual harassment and all that. So it's becoming like a pattern, you know, amongst women who probably feel cheated out or who are losing out of something. And unfortunately for Akpabio, I feel for him, even though I've not seen him for like 3 years now. We've not spoken, you know, since he became Senate president. But I think I have sympathy for him because it's looking as if it's a pattern, you know, that anybody who works closely with him. But there are also others who have worked with him, and me in particular, I didn't see any such aspect. So I think that we need to go beyond those personal issues. Nigeria has problem. The Ajokuta thing she's talking about, we want to know what her interest is, and then leave this issue. Of course, on the issue of suspension, that's the rule of the Senate. It doesn't mean that it cannot be relaxed. It has happened to the likes of, what's his name, the former DG to Ali Ndukwe, former DG to Akpabio, when he was running for Senate president. He was suspended. Abdul Ningi, a high-ranking senator like this man, was also suspended. People have been suspended, and later on, these things are relaxed. So I don't think that she needs to take her own out of unnecessary.
Right. And do you think this is a matter that will pass away somewhat now? It's been called a distraction. The Senate has also expressed its concern somewhat as to how Nigerians are viewing this matter away from what should be its regular and paramount business. These are amidst calls that the Senate president should recuse himself, you know, from further leadership of the House until the dust settles, and probably give way for a fair investigation of all these allegations. Do you think this is possible?
Well, on normal circumstances, that would have been possible, but you don't ask the leadership of the Senate president, to recuse himself on a matter that is... Don't forget that the issue of sexual harassment was not before the House. It's not even before the courts. The issue was her flouting of the Senate rules, you know, the sitting arrangement and all that. So when you say the man should recuse himself for what? For doing what? For evoking the rule of the House, saying that, look, you must go to... I heard the man clearly. He said, Senator Natasha, go to your seat. I will listen to you. We will hear you, but you have to first go to your seat. So why would the man recuse himself? Now, because there's an attachment of sexual harassment, I think that the focus, the emphasis on recusing himself, you know, speaks volume. There's a political undertone there. There are persons who just want to see that, I mean, the Senate president is eased off, even if it's for a week or for a month or for whatever, and then maybe they could, of course, have their own person or whoever they want. We are going into the election year. You know, so a lot of don't forget that Natasha is from the opposition, irrespective of the fact that her family shares a close bond with Akpabio. She's from the opposition. And in this business, your interest is more important than whatever shared interest we have. She's from the opposition. So
and why you talk about
the fact that...
Right. Apologies, I'm trying to push my final question. Perhaps you could also make your final submissions when I hand over to you. I also want to know what impact you think this controversy will have on increased gender equity in the Senate and other, you know, legislatures around the country. Now that we're talking about future elections or the forthcoming election.
Yeah, I would even prefer to, you know, take that question to you. What do you think will happen even in the next elections, you know, to women who will seek elective positions and probably will depend on the men who, of course, have the larger numbers, you know, to sponsor them for these elective positions? You think that anybody will want to make such an investment? If you look at the likes of Senator Orji Zokalo and the rest of them, I remember when it was difficult for him to even sponsor anybody again for governorship in Abia State because of the experience he had, you know. So it's the same thing. A lot of men are going to become very wary of women because, for me, it's a distraction. We don't even have the numbers yet in the National Assembly. We need to increase participation, and we need to get the confidence of the men. Like Senator Itagiwa said, by the time you find yourself at that level, you cannot even be blackmailed anymore. For those of us in the journalism industry, we are all called gentlemen of the press. Nobody intimidates anybody. And at the same time, you still accord people the respect they deserve. So going forward, it may be difficult. We have only 4 female senators. Now, with this kind of blackmail scandal and controversies, are you sure that more women are going to be given the chance? So it's for the Nigerian women to rise up to the occasion to say, look, you cannot, because of a case, 1 or 2 cases like that, you know, deny us participation. We still have women who are responsible. It's irrespective of whatever Senator Ireti Kingibe had with Senator Akpabio. You can see that she is still on, and some others who have also spoken nicely. So we must be careful in fighting our own cause so that we don't undermine the general cause of every other person, you know. So we have to be very careful. So I am begging the men, I am also asking that they should probably overlook this, while we also call for caution. Sometimes, let me say this, Akpabio can be too humorous. He jokes with everything. Have an hour session with him. He's talking 58 minutes. He's cracking jokes and laughing. And unfortunately, it's like some persons take advantage of that, you know, and so they think that. So I'm only asking that we should tone down this negative narrative, even while the investigation, if the matter is in court, let the investigation go on. But if the matter is not in court, we throw it out, we trash it, and focus on the issues of probably recalling her back to the Senate, which I believe Akpabio will do. I think the Senate will
with or without an apology.
Just do the needful. And yes, that's all. An apology for, don't forget, it's not an apology to Akpabio, it's an apology to the Senate. Because it was on the Harlow Chambers that she displayed that uncalled for attitude, you know. So she can apologize and then they move on. Any other thing can follow. She can pursue whatever human rights case she thinks she has against him. So nobody will stop her.
All right. We thank you very much, Ndukwe, for your contributions on the standpoint.
Thank you. Thank you.